Hey, Dylan.
Hey, Mike.
Guess what, Dylan?
What, Mike?
Sunburn 2.0.18. These guys just don't quit. They never give up. They never stop. New Sunburn release 2012. We're already dropping new Sunburns. It seems like only like a few months ago we were talking about 2.0.17. Let me run down you, Dylan, what we've got in 2018, 2018, 2018.
2.0.18.
That seems like a mouthful.
Why would it be
that doesn't roll off the
2018?
tongue. 18? Double 18? Deuce 18?
I think you're overcomplicating build
It just
numbers.
doesn't roll off the tongue. Just Sunburn, throw out your entire numbering convention and come out with something that just rolls off the tongue. So I can just
XP Vista 7, 8.
Sunburn 20XX. That's what I'm going to call this release here. This is Sunburn 20XX. What's new in Sunburn 20XX? Integrated physics, bitches. That's right. Your 3D rendering graphic tool got physics built right in, all in the same framework. You get one, you get the other, and because it's Sunburn, you get to choose what pieces you want to use. So hey, if you're digging Farseer, man, if you're like, I love me some Farseer, I got it, it's shipped it with several games, I could not do Pong without Farseer. You can still use your Farseer if that so happens to be your choice. You don't have to take it over. But if you're like, I've been rolling my own Pong routines, man, and it's a bitch. I'm gonna admit, it's a bitch. Just, the ball comes in, and it deflects, and it has to deflect off the paddles and the walls, and it's too much, man. It is too much. I want to write my game. I want to work on my Pong story, my Pong RPG, and get my epic tales of Pongness, but I can't. I'm just sitting here messing with the bouncing off the wall and trying to get that right. Now you can, load up Sunburn and go into the integrated physics and just, get that stuff for free.
Pong RPG.
That's patented, by the way. If you do a Pong
Trademarked
RPG, you got to send GameMarx a little something something on the back end for that.
Isn't that like Wizorb times 2?
Yeah, I guess you could say
Breakout is half a Pong.
I guess I have to send Wizorb a cease and desist. They've infringed upon our patented RPG Ponging mechanic. They're actually a Breakout. I don't know.
That's what I don't
Breakout
know. Is
That's
half of Pong.
That's going to go to the Supreme Court.
Breakout is half of Pong.
Breakout is half of Pong. This is going to go to the Supreme Court. That's where that's going to have to be decided. I don't think we'll settle for anything less. What else do you have? Enhanced terrain. Do I know what that means? No. But it's better than it was before. There was terrain, and now it is enhanced.
Does it have what plants crave?
It could. I don't know. Whatever the plants were craving, it's enhanced now. It's an enhancement to what the plants were craving. They crave it even more.
These are the sort of advertisements that are the problem.
Well, I looked this up and I, read through this, and we've also enhanced Sunburn's terrain system, adding collisions via the new physics system, collision material properties like elasticity and friction, and much more. So
you do know what it means. Okay, there you go.
But probably the biggest addition is control over terrain tilting. You can tilt your terrain. What does that mean? I don't know. But it was a hugely requested feature. So there were a lot of people out there who know what tilting terrain is, were requesting it. Now they have it. That's what Synapse Gaming does. They give you what you want. They have electrolytes. They're electrolyte dealers. They're electrolyte pimps. That's what they have. They will get you some electrolytes. They will get you Sunburn 20XX, also known as 2.0.18, until they update to my new naming convention. You can go learn more at synapsegaming.com. All right.
Somehow we will manage to keep sponsorship after that. It will be a miracle.
They take it back after 6 months, and they're like, let's keep going. So
Well, it's for charity, so who cares? You know?
It is for charity. We said like, hey, Money's always great, but help us out at Technology Cooperative. And anybody listening to the podcast, go to techco.org, give $25. We have, we'll get more into the show here in a second, but we have a kid, what are they, like, second grade? Third grade? Like, how old are these kids?
I don't know.
Like 8? 7?
I don't know.
They're rocking, now they're not doing X&A at our group that meets at TechCo. We're using GameMaker with them. But, I mean, these kids are all about it. So, it's crazy. It's almost like I gotta take the kid out. Cause like, man, if you start writing games at like age 7, fuck, I don't stand a chance at that, you know? Like,
You will be
no
Miyamoto.
Yeah, that's basically it. Like, the kid will have a company. He'll be making consoles by the time he's 18. You know? He'll make Zuckerberg look old. You're like, what the hell? You know? What were you, 25? Old man, you know? I already IPO'd 3 times by the time I was 18.
I didn't have to ruin anyone's privacy to do it.
Oh man, wait until Facebook is answering to shareholders.
Dear Lord.
You think they're evil now. Wait until they're like, oh crap, the shareholders. Like, 'cause if you come out on a shareholders thing and like, oh, we were like 2% lower than the analyst. Fuck it, you're dead. You're like, your stock's going in the toilet. You're awful. You know, it's like all these people, all shareholders care about is profit and money. And then it's like, well, we could make a bunch of money selling everybody's private details. Is it ethical? Can we quite do around with it? I don't know. Let the lawyers figure it out in the lawsuit on the back end.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like, I mean...
All they have to do is include a checkbox in your privacy set update. And if you don't uncheck it, then they get to sell your privacy.
Well, the funny thing is, they're basically... I know they have a lot of R&D there, but they basically have one product. Facebook. It's not like Google, which is...
Well, the product is you.
Well, yes.
Remember, guys. Remember, kids. If you're not paying for the product, you're the product. Oh, there's a webcomic that goes perfectly with that, and it's 2 pigs out in front of a bacon factory going like, man, this resort is great. You know, free food every day, get to lounge around all we want. I love it. And it's like, you know, if you're not paying for the product, you're the product.
Yes, you are.
Yes, you are. We're selling your data, Element City. We're selling your data that we don't really have or collect. No, we're idiots because we don't actually make anything. We've never like figured out
how to make this profitable.
How to turn this into a thing other than a hobby. But
just gotta let them close that door.
Going to check on her.
Nope.
This week, Dylan, coding this week. We actually have some cool coding stuff that is going to, some of it we'll talk about later. So the topic this week is going to be developer tools, because you game developers are coding like it's the Stone Ages. As a, you know, any business developer that looks at the game developers, it's kind of like, holy crap, no source control, no, you know, like no Kanban system. What are you guys doing? This is crazy. And so this week we're just going to kind of run down and give some actual, like, here's where you go, here's how you sign this up, it's all free, get yourself protected from, you know, system crashes, get a development process in there, you know, so where multiple people can collaborate and deal with all that. One of the tools, though, that we'll talk about now is kind of XNA specific. So the other stuff will be generic, but this is XNA specific. You put Time Ruler into Captain Dubstep this week.
Yeah, and Time Ruler is, I think it's actually, I believe it's under like performance measurement on the App Hub forum, or the App Hub.
It's on the education catalog.
Yeah, education catalog, and it's got the Time Ruler, which will let you see how much time your update and draw calls are taking.
Yeah, so it overlays a bar graph, and if while the game goes, you constantly see the bar graph like jumping up and down. The full length of the bar is 1 frame, and so basically, if you're pegging that, then you're soaking up an entire frame. But not only do you get like the draw and update call, so you get like draw updates in red and draws in blue. Is that?
Yeah, I think
that,
if you
that
use the default, like if you copy
the blue
code
part
out,
of the bar graph is your update portion, and the other part is draw. But the cool thing is that you can actually set stopwatch points and create other colors in the bar. So if like your collision detection you want to call out separately, you can make that yellow, and then just time from this point to see, you know, how much of my frame is being spent in collision detection. But it also gives you more than just this bar graph.
yeah, it gives you frame rate. I think there are actually a couple other tools that you can bring up. I think those were the only two I enabled by default.
It gives you a console, which you've got that turned in. So you can just hit tab now in the Captain Dubstep build, and an old school console comes down to from the top of the screen, where you can just type in commands, and you can easily wire up. Like if they type in this, call this method, and that'll be my implementation of that console command. It really doesn't take a whole lot to get that set up. So that way you can have like debug statements and things like that, like, you know, change my physics, you know, increase elasticity by 50%. Let me play a little bit. Oh, I don't like that. And the cool thing is that it will work with, I think it'll work with a chat pad, but I know it will work with a USB keyboard connected to an Xbox. So you can do it on the PC or on the Xbox. You just
Well, you're dumping in class files, so you could probably go in and make it work with the chat pad, you know, assuming it's using, you know, your keyboard state.
I've talked with the man who wrote this, and he's Japanese, which is why this product is kind of buried and didn't get a lot of discussion, even though it's excellent. And you should almost be using this in any XNA game. If you're doing an XNA game, you should put Time Ruler in there. But like all his comments originally were in Japanese, and all the instructions were in Japanese, so you know that kind of limited like the discovery of that.
It's a little bit awkward to use because it really is just the CS files. Like even if you download the sample, not just, you know, the main.
Yeah, it's not
project.
a DLL you're adding to the project. It's some CS files that you drop in. Now it's written in such a way that when you compile it for release, it does nothing.
Right.
So you don't have to worry about unhooking it or writing code that turns it off.
I guess that probably makes sense. Like,
automatically do nothing when you go for release, so you don't even have to worry about that. So you get this awesome little in-game profiling tool that you can leave in your final build. You don't have to worry about like breaking something versus debug versus release because you had this profiling tool and you want to unhook it for performance when you go live.
Yeah.
You also did a couple other things on Captain Dubstep this week.
I played around with some of the collision detection because you'd been talking to me about that, and I keep meaning to go back and like I need to do a screencast for the game storyboard designer. It's like I had a cold this week. Like I can't do narration, and honestly, it's one of those things that I'm just like, you know, kind of stuck on. So put it on the back burner. Come back to it later. But so I started messing around with that, and I've got it now where since we are doing pixel collision against the actual map tiles. Now I've got it where it will step the character up if, you know, it's a couple of pixels different.
So if there's a little lip on the edge of the tile, because it's like the end of a pipe, he will hit that and just go over it like it was, you know, nothing, because to the player, that's not a significant obstacle.
And also, like, I kind of poked around and figured out that one of the problems we ran into is we're doing direct pixel collision against the character, which is fine, you know, 75% of the time, but the character that we're using has, like, space between his hand and his foot, for example. If you're doing pixel collisions, you're bound to get something caught on something else if you're doing that. So.
Right, so you could, like, if his hand was sticking out from his foot and he falls off the ledge, you could, like, almost, well, it'd be like grabbing the ledge with your hand, but it wouldn't look like you were grabbing the ledge with your hand. You're just stuck on an odd spot.
Yeah.
So what we'll probably end up doing is just having a tile in our sprite sheet that's mapping out the region we care about, and then, you know, it'll still be pixel-based collision. It'll just be a big square, probably, when it ends up, and that'll solve these rough edge issues.
Also messed around with, you were having issues with, like, the camera controls. That's, I don't know, I think you've looked at it, I've looked at it, and, well, I don't know if we want to get into it.
The issue with our camera control is that we're trying to state the regions that the camera can go in the level editor. And we're using tiled, and I'm just drawing in regions in tiled that the camera has to stay within. But then there becomes instances where the camera is actually in 2 zones at the same time, and then that becomes problematic because the camera has to pick which zone to be in, and so when it's in the wrong zone when you leave that, then it kind of like jumps.
Yeah.
And we might be able to work around that by how we lay out the level design, but it would be nice to work that out in code so it did something intelligent so that we don't have to spend all our time testing all these edge cases.
You could Mega Man it.
What do you mean? Like,
it's kind of what... So that's kind of the idea of what we're doing, in that you draw... Okay, so the camera's going to move horizontally for a while, and then it can move vertically. It's in that transition state, getting the camera to figure out when you're in the state that goes vertical and then it's going to switch horizontal. It's getting it to figure out where it needs to be, when it needs to be, and the player may not be in the right position.
Yeah, one of the things I tried last night was to kind of intelligently choose one of the available zones, if you've got overlapping zones, based on the direction that the camera is wanting to move. And the camera is locked to the player. So what's funny is you end up, everything I tried, it still ends up having a problem because at some level, what you're trying to do is intelligently guess what the player's next move is. And like, a lot of the games like Mega Man and Metroid did that, and I really need to go back and play some of them.
Actually, so I've gone back and I've looked at them for the specific problem, and they both avoid it. So what we're trying to do is have it follow these camera tracks, but have it behave retro-styled, where the camera's either scrolling vertically or scrolling horizontally. It's not a free camera.
Yeah.
But since we have modern technology, we don't have to have load sequences for all these different levels.
Yeah.
We can load the entire level at once, and that's actually very advantageous because it'll just be one giant map to load in the editor and work on regions and add things out and not have to work on all these loading and unloading, levels, because we can just have this one, because we're going for a Metroidvania style world. And it'd be just easier to have it all connected together at once rather than have pieces and kind of have to remember things at.
Yeah,
but when you go back into the Metroid and Mega Man, they have a breakpoint anytime the camera changes direction. So when you start out in Metroid, you go left to right. When you exit the door, right, that first set of doors where you can bomb and go underneath, in that area the camera goes up and down. Then you exit the next door, the camera goes left and right. The same as in Mega Man. In Mega Man, you run for a little bit, and when you start to go down, the first time you jump down after you've been going horizontal, you hit that tile that rolls up the next screen. So it's like a whole shift. Then that zone will move up and down for a while, and when you move out of that one, then you get a shift, and now it's locked horizontal. So they're actually separate zones, and there's a bit. The camera moves horizontal, or the camera moves vertical. The camera never has to decide between both, which the way it's done so far, we're having to decide between both.
That was kind of what I came to last night after tinkering around for a while. It's like, we're trying to fake something that was a limitation of technology. The reason the camera was constrained to a particular zone in, Metroid or Mega Man was because the map itself was this little tiny fragment. I have a vague, really complicated idea of how we might be able to get it to act more intelligently based on that, where you actually figure out where the camera is supposed to move, figure out what the X and Y movement is, figure out what zones that would be within, and then test whether the camera is completely covered by all the zones. So completely contained.
And if you went something like that, because I've been thinking it could also be back to how
Basically,
we lay
we're
out the camera
pretending that
track.
anything outside the zones doesn't exist.
Well, we could also go back into how we lay out the camera track. And so right now, I have complete overlap. So
Yeah.
like when it changes from horizontal to vertical, that corner, the horizontal and the vertical overlap 100% for the one screen that can go either way.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, well, what if it didn't? What if, like only one like edged over a little bit, and then like there would be a clue as to like, okay, well you should start shifting to this one or something. Or maybe they don't overlap. Maybe, it's like, oh no, we should never overlap our
And you
camera
have that
zones.
transition.
And then the camera can actually like be in between two zones.
Yeah, that that would work, but
Which might be a
I think
little
that's
easier in
close
the
to-
editor because
yeah.
when multiple things are on the same layer on top of each other and tiled,
Yeah.
it gets kind of hard to grab the right corner and drag.
Yeah. I think actually that's kind of what I'm getting at, like the idea that all of the zones are one thing instead of individual things, and the camera has to be completely contained within it. It's just the math on that is insane, and you have to do the hit detection thing where you slowly, move the camera until it hits a wall.
Come on, man. After I've got the math to find the index into the buffer.
I actually worked out last night I think this will work. I'm not certain, but a method of figuring out, like, you're given one rectangle and then a series of other rectangles. Is that first rectangle completely contained by all those other matching rectangles? And
So by the combination of the other rectangles.
Yes.
Not like this rectangle is inside of that rectangle.
yes,
It's like every portion of this rectangle gets... Rectangles are actually not that hard to break down and deal with. Because you can usually figure out, like, okay, well, you got to be greater than or less than this one, greater than that,
Yeah.
and like, you just got to kind of get your order right and the orientation right of whether you want greater or less than. I don't know. I found rectangles much easier the more I've worked with them, the
Yeah.
easier they've become to do. Although you do have like intersection contains method in X and A's. That
Yeah.
wouldn't help you for a group.
no. But what I actually figured out, I think, was you could take all of the source rectangles and you could do an intersects on them, each against the rectangle you're testing for the camera location, and then you could figure out which of those resulting intersections contain the other intersections, do some math, and if your resulting area is the same as the area of the original rectangle, then it's completely contained. But I don't know that works. That's just a guess that came to me at like 1 a.m.
So, we've gone on the camera long enough.
Yes.
Gaming-wise, I think I said I wrapped up, or maybe I didn't say it on the podcast, I wrapped up Dead Space 2. I know I've talked about how I'm not enamored with Dead Space 2.
Yeah.
But I started playing LA Noire. So I'm in my catch-up mode of, games last year and
Right.
and ones to catch up with. And so I popped in LA Noire, which, released a great critical acclaim, and supposedly, you have this great facial capture recognition to tell if people are lying. Have you played it at all?
No,
Or
but
just-
I
okay,
remember seeing...
Yeah, a lot
about
on it. So I am really me, and oh Lord no,
What?
Ragarthian. How do we settle on saying his name?
Regarthin.
Okay. And it's like, is it just me, or does it sound like they need A+ A-star pathing for their camera? Which A-star pathing is the artificial intelligence. It's kind of like the accepted easy way
Yeah.
to have a unit march from one end of the screen to the other and not get caught in a cul-de-sac. And God no, like I've read on that, and that if we're doing that for our camera, we're doing it wrong.
Well, and like I said, what we're trying to do is we're trying to fake something
Yeah.
that was a limitation, and
So
anyway.
I got to say I'm disappointed on several points by LA Noire.
Okay.
First of all, the whole vaulted, interview, are they lying? Are they telling the truth? Skills you'll have to use to determine all that. that's a load of crap. So they do all this facial animation stuff, and again, I should say that I've done like 9 or so cases now, I think. So I don't know if it's going to significantly ramp up at this point, but I mean, those 9 cases I've played like 4 or 5 hours. Like it's not quick for a case.
Yeah.
Fuck the person that did not put in a save system. I mean, there's a save, but because they don't want you going back and like, oh, well, I got that question wrong, I'll reload and play it again and get that question right? So, and that's good. I mean, I'm okay with the fact that I can't replay a section, that it's only forward saving, and I can't have multiple saves, but what I can't do is save manually. Like, it's up to the game when the game decides to save, which is usually at, like, scene transitions and shit like that. And, I mean, I came down, I actually did play an entire interview again, because I thought, like, okay, I left that interview and we got in the car,
surely
and I
saved.
figured, like, hey, because it's kind of Grand Theft Auto-y when you get in the car, like, okay, surely it's saved, shut it down for the night. There's no button that I can hit and say, like, save now. Logged in the next day, and it's like, oh, I just got to the place. Well, fuck, I have to go through everything again. So the interview portion, I mean, it's mini-game-ish. And you have these people on here, and, like, you're interviewing a guy, and his wife's dead, and, you know, the guy's like, oh my god, I can't believe she's dead, and, you know, she's my wife, and, oh, this is horrible, I don't know what's gonna happen, and, you know, I don't know whatever I'll do, and it's like, okay, so, you know, you ask a question like, you know, so, you know, were you out with her last night? Oh, no, I wasn't out with her off, you know, and then it's like looking around the room, and it's like so fucking blatant. Like, all this effort that you put into it, and then even on the ones that'll like, I'm believing them, you know? Like, you're interviewing a little girl, or you're interviewing a young actress or something, and, you know, they're like, no, I trucked down here, and, you know, he's just a wonderful producer, and, you know, he's never hurt me or laid a finger on me or ever done anything, you know, except the times, but those don't matter. And I'm like, why would you just leave something blatant at the end like that makes me go like, okay, you didn't tell me the whole story. Hit the doubt button. You didn't tell me the whole story, you know? So it's like they were chicken to actually fully implement it to where, you know, you're really going to have to pay and look for clues and try to suss out whether they're lying or not.
Well, considering that it was this new technology, like the facial capture stuff, I kind of wonder if, assuming it doesn't ramp up, that, you know, they're doing that just to kind of show off the technology and, you know.
It's such a waste of the technology, though, because it's like, this is Monkey Island level dialogue interrogation, okay?
Yes.
So all this technology is for nothing if you didn't make it part of the gameplay. And then, and I mean the face and animation and stuff, I mean, it's the exception, not the rule, when it hits Uncanny Valley. And,
Yeah.
and it's almost to the point that when it does hit Uncanny Valley, I become aware of how long I've been playing the game, and it didn't feel uncanny. And I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, that's really good. I mean, this feels wonky here. But the last 30 minutes, I haven't even thought about that. Like, it all feels natural. And the other thing, so it really has this mini-game flow. You show up to the crime scene, or you show up to the area you're investigating, you walk around the room, when it vibrates, you hit the A button to inspect an item, and then he'll just tell you. He'll just come out and say, this isn't pertaining to the case, so you put that back down. And if he doesn't say that, then you just sit there for a second, you roll it around in your hands, and in a moment it'll zoom in, and it'll add it to your notebook of evidence. Okay?
Right.
Then, once you've walked all around the room and you found all the evidence, you have the interview with the person sitting there, and then when you accuse them of lying, so you can say they're telling the truth, you can choose doubt, which is basically saying they're lying without evidence, and then you can say they actually are lying. And at that point, they'll go, oh, I don't know, you can't prove that, you know? That's ridiculous. Why would I do that, you know? And then you go like, you open up your notebook and you have to pick evidence, and you're like, oh, because I found, like, your keys, you know, at the crime scene or something. And then like, oh my god, you found me out, you know, and it's horrible. The other thing that pisses me off is like, did these guys watch one fucking police drama? Could they watch, like, Law and Order a few times or something? Because I actually am getting pissed off with, like, the disregard to police procedure in the game.
Really?
Yes. So they're, like, coming up, and it's like, well, we got this one witness remembered 3 letters of the license plate of the hit and run. And so we call that in, and they look up, and they say, yeah, that looks like, you know, there's a red car or whatever. There's a couple matches. You find basically, here's an address off of
When
that.
is this supposed to be set, though? Isn't this
in
like
the 40s, 50s.
40s? Okay. I was thinking like 20s prohibition. Like,
No. So it's,
maybe it's supposed to be like the whole mob.
No,
you know, like,
no. It's after World War II because there's flashbacks to World War II with your character all the time.
So it's not at a point where you would expect like police, you know, skirting procedure to be
Well,
just
let
kind
me
of
tell
part
you
of the setting.
exactly how blatant this is. So
Okay.
all you have is an eyewitness that could remember 3 letters of a license plate, but you managed to get an address off that in the database. You're going to go check it out. And then your partner's like, as you're walking up to the door, just kick in the door. And then you just kick in the door and rifle through the entire place. And I'm like, no, you can't fucking do any of that. All of that shit is inadmissible. It is forbidden fruit that not only can you
Did you try that?
not use... No, you have to do that.
You
It's
have
not
to
an
do
option. It's your guy then, like, goes into a QuickTime event and kicks in the door, and, like, now you're walking around and just checking everything
Because
out.
I think like
It's like warrants.
that would be
Get
a
a
good
fucking
game
warrant.
over condition where it's like you get to the end and the prosecutor's like, I can't do anything with this.
That would actually be interesting.
That
Like,
would
the
be
prosecutor goes, I can't do anything with this. You go to the judge. You're like, Judge, we got the license plate and the number, and we think he killed the girl. And the judge is like, you got a drunk who could remember 3 letters of a license plate? You don't have enough evidence for the warrant. And now you gotta, like, do, like, a stakeout, or maybe get a warrant for the wiretap or something. And you have to, like, get enough evidence to get the warrant to search the place. Or you have to use your investigative procedures, like, okay, go talk to him and see if you can shake him down, bring him in for questioning, and get him to say something that'll give us the right to go in.
or here's a list of people
Yeah.
with matching license.
There's total bullshit where you're in an investigation and you bring somebody in and they're like, I don't want to say anything to you, I want my lawyer. And you're like, no, I'm going to keep questioning you. No, you can't do that, okay?
Miranda rights. Miranda
You
rights.
can't do that. He asked for his lawyer. He said he wants to say something to his lawyer. That's it. Interview over. And
Oh, again, like it's LA
and see,
Noir.
the thing is
it's
like
supposed to
with-
be seedy,
with
except it's like
all the,
the
Law and
clean
Order
version of
cases and all that,
seedy.
you know, stuff. It's like they go into like the order part of the Law and Order. You know, like
Yes.
first they have to go to the cop, and then like you know Sam. I forget his what's his character's name.
Jack McCoy.
McCoy, yeah. McCoy's like, I can't do anything with this. You went in without a warrant. I can not only can I not use that search, I can't talk about the evidence we found in that search because it was gotten in an illegal manner and it's barred from being used. And now there's no case.
Yep.
So
And even-
congratulations, the rapist walks because you fucked up. And he would tell that to cops, too. I love those episodes. You fucked up and didn't do your job. Now the guy we know did it walks, you know? And I just love that. And I was like, I would love this cop drama where I had to follow and play that, you know? I would love to take the technology of LA Noire and actually make a Law and Order game, you know?
Instead of the Law and Order
Yes.
games that they made.
We'll forget about that. That's... I'd rather play, what's the Ace Attorney game? You know, I'd rather play that
Phoenix Wright, yes.
Yeah.
than the Law and Order game that they made. That's what I've been playing recently. I don't know if you've been playing anything new recently.
Nope.
No? Still Skyrim?
Still Skyrim. Still, I got into blatant outright achievement whoring. Like, I've been playing the good guy now, and I'm like, you know what? There's a bunch of Thieves Guild and Dark Brotherhood achievements I could be getting. I'm gonna go join those.
I'm not
So
playing,
now I'm killing people and stealing things.
I'm not playing Skyrim, and I probably won't. So this is just secondhand information. But I do resent the fact that you could be leader of all guilds.
Yes, it is kind of ludicrous.
You know, it's like, no, dude, you're fucking leader of the Thieves Guild. You're not going to lead the Knights of Honor. Fuck you. You're out of here, dude. Like, we're going to kill you on sight for walking in here because you're leader of the Thieves Guild.
There actually is a scene like that. The Thieves Guild has the policy of, like, you know, no killing, you know, we're not the Dark Brotherhood. And then the Dark Brotherhood at one point sends you to someone in the Thieves Guild to get something appraised. And the guy's like, "Oh, well, you're here on Dark Brotherhood business. Wow," and there's no like, "No, you're blatantly disregarding our principles." No, it is ludicrous. And I think, it works if you're playing very, like, if you're not getting in real deep and, hey, you become the Archmage and nothing else. That makes sense. But, yeah, it does get kind of ludicrous.
Anything new that you've been playing, Cicely?
No.
No, that you have talked before?
No, I've been on the indies games a couple of times. I've played one or two games. I can't remember the names of them now, but one of them looked cute. The other one was kind of like a dating sim. Like
Wait,
one of those,
really?
Yeah, it was like one of those Japanese dating sims, only this one was completely in.
Oh, this is the Don't Die Dateless dummy.
Yes. And I actually like that. I almost spent $1 on that.
Yeah, it's one of the Japanese things. Like, at first I looked at it and I thought it was another stupid how to get girls.
Yeah.
But I looked at it and I was like, okay, I can see an audience for that because people play those Japanese dating games. So that one's actually, it's like, okay, you're cool. People play these, doing it for Xbox.
The title makes sense if you say it in, like, the stereotypical, what's the word? Like the woman who is angry. Tsundere, or am I...
Tsunade?
No.
Tsunade-sama?
No, like, there's a concept. Like, there's an archetype.
Okay.
Never mind. I don't
get
know.
what you're saying.
I need to check out Brand. I think is released.
Yes.
So we interviewed Gullamine,
No.
9 Dot Studios back in August of last year. It was quite a while. And also Cell Emergence comes out next week, which is the Sheldon Pecote game. The guy who wrote the story to the original Deus Ex. And I think followed on the sequel to Deus Ex, story-wise, or worked on that too. I can't remember exactly, but we also interviewed him. So I'm really kind of curious to check out both of those games, because they seem to be above average production levels for your common indie. But I think like Brand is coming out and Cell Emergence is coming out on like multiple platforms at once. They're not just Xbox Live indie games, they're hitting multiples. So I want to check those out and then see if we'll do video on those. I still got to produce the video interview of the Evil Quest guys, and I don't know that that's happening with the Super Bowl weekend distraction going on this weekend, but I need to get that out and get that up, and I want to get the interview up at the same time we do our commentary video. I don't want to put the commentary video up. I want to kind of put them up hand in hand because there's references between the two, and have that viewed up. So I'm keeping an eye on the channel, but there hasn't been much pique my interest except those two, I think. And I haven't even tried trials of those. So.
I tried the Don't Die a long time.
Elements, CY there, Elementia said that Indie Chick hates it. I guess he's talking about Brand because Cell's not out. And, that doesn't surprise me. Find me a game that she likes.
Wow.
All right. News. First, some light news here. So we've talked a little bit about Stephen Colbert's Super PAC. Did you see that the Harmonix CEO is the top contributor?
Yes, I saw that.
The Super PAC. Do you know more about this? Because I've just seen it, and is it like PR stunt level? Like he did it because the Harmonix will be in the news type thing, or
no?
Like, what are they doing with the
idea.
money? Are they actually doing something with the PAC money?
Yeah, I don't know. I thought, I don't know. This is just me, like not getting humor, and like being completely gullible. But when they say we ran this ad, I assume they actually ran the ad. But
they ran an attack ad on Stephen Colbert.
Well, yeah. Like,
Stephen Colbert's Super PAC ran an attack ad against him, and it ended with, like, vote for Herman Cain.
Well, yeah, like, that was part of the... Well,
I didn't think they were taking, like, the PAC was, like, taking in real donor money.
Do you remember what they did, why he wanted you to vote for Herman Cain?
Well, because a vote for Herman Cain is a vote for Stephen Colbert.
Yeah, so... And... Yeah.
But, okay. So
let's not go
I don't
into
know.
that.
Maybe there'll be more come about it. Maybe it was just a thing. I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. that do this. Quick hit here. Mass Effect 3 demo is going to provide you temporary Xbox Live gold accounts. So if you want to play the Mass Effect 3 demo, it's going to be out, I guess, sometime soon. And I won't fucking play it because I want to play fucking Mass Effect, and I'm avoiding all spoilers and shit. And the only thing I did click on is I did watch the video of the voice actors. Because that's just kind of cool. Because Mass Effect has some big names voice acting the parts. So, I clicked on that. There was no reveals in that one, though. Just, they only showed you characters you knew exist. They didn't show you any new characters introduced, so no spoilers. It's completely safe. Other than that, I'm in total blackout of Mass Effect 3. So, really looking forward to that coming out. But they're going to do this demo, I guess, to get their co-op or their online mode or whatever they're adding into the game or something. They're going to do some demo to get a larger test of it done. But to get the demo, you're going to have a gold account because that's just the way Microsoft's stupid gold shit works, right?
Right.
And of course they don't want that because they want a large number of people checking it out. So Microsoft's going to let people create temporary gold accounts to get the demo. You can go in and here's a free gold account to check out the demo. Last 1 month. Get to experience all the benefits of gold for that month. So get ready for a whole bunch of vote hacking on Xbox Live Indie Games when that goes up, because that's usually what happens when that coincides quite well. Because you need gold accounts to vote from the website, and that's the easiest place to hack voting. And it's still not fixed. You can still do that. The only thing they changed is that you need a gold account instead of a silver account. And now you'll be able to get free gold accounts, as many as you want. Go in there and do the vote spamming. So expect a lot of that to come through. I'm going to do some more stats on that. I think I am actually going to push forward some of my stats. And since I've been splunking around in the data, and I have much more data than I had last year when I was writing on this stuff. But I'll just go ahead and say there's no clear winner. So what you expect to find is, these games are getting targeted, but here's the game bucking the trend, either by positive votes or by not getting hit. And I think what reality is there's multiple bad actors. There's multiple people downvoting, so that even if you're downvoting, of course you're not going to downvote your own game, but the next guy will get yours. So it's just the apocalypse. It's like everybody's getting downvoted. Doesn't matter. There's no winner in this scenario.
Yeah, and the sad thing is, if there was a legitimate smoking gun, internet hate machine would fire up, stuff would happen, but this just means it's easy to start pointing fingers.
There's been some stupid Twitter accounts, like the Xbox Live Indie Games is Dead Twitter account. I don't know who's behind that, but they're a freaking idiot. Because they were sending, I forget the name of the game. Was it Sequence? No, it was Bloody Checkers. They were like, look, they're vote hacking. And it's no, they're not, dude. They're not. There's a month where they get a whole bunch of votes, but I think it was the month they were featured in a Halloween promo or something. Yeah. They were dashboard featured for a bit or something.
Well, I know they didn't update. I think they have a community.
If you look at their rankings, not their votes, because they're ranking in the top lists. When all those votes came in, the ranking pretty much stayed consistent. So that's what you would expect. You would expect after a game has established its rating, more votes coming in are just going to average around what it's already averaged. It's going to stick around that number, And if there's foul play going on, it's going to go down or it's going to go up. And it's their game doesn't do that. So you're accusing this game of vote manipulation, and you could look clearly at the chart and see a whole bunch of votes came in, but they actually kind of just hovered around the same spot and didn't change. So
that is the downside of there being no smoking gun. I think I said this before, it just it becomes the scapegoat, which is unfortunate.
So short of Microsoft doing something, no. There's not going to be any way to clear out the smoking gun. And once again, Microsoft does contain all of the data to find, shut down, and retroactively repair the damage, because they can look at the live accounts that voted, and this is provable that they have that data, because all you need to do, vote on a game, log out, log back in, and guess what? It remembers what you voted on. So somewhere there's a database that knows that I voted on this.
And in
it'd
theory,
be real easy
IP addresses
to do some SQL queries and find out, oh, look, here's all these accounts that have never done anything but vote, and they only vote ones. Except on this game, they vote fives. And you could do a wide swath and do a mass banning and unrolling, all at once, if Microsoft cared. That's the key thing. They have the data, and this is just another thing that they're not caring. I think I will jump ahead in the Microsoft not caring because I had another news article. Maybe I didn't put it up. Maybe I thought I had the Windows Phone leak story. I don't know what happened to my Windows Phone leak story. Basically, Windows Phone, a presentation from Microsoft to Nokia that leaked, contained a lot of information about Windows Phone 8. So it's basically Microsoft execs presenting to Windows Nokia execs like the plans for Windows Phone 8, and yes, the plan is WinRT. WinRT is going to be on Windows Phone 8. Now, we've been saying this for a while that this would be stupid not to, but it immediately raises the problem of what about all the Windows Phone 7, Silverlight, and XNA apps, right? Because there's no Silverlight and there's no XNA in the Windows RT world, right? Those are things they're drifting away from, and they're in desktop compatibility mode, and, that's not the way forward. So, it's kind of like, what the hell is going on with these? And so Microsoft, because the leak was the video, they couldn't be like, oh, that's a rumor, we don't count on it. It's like, no, it's a video of you saying it. This isn't really like secondhand information. You said this. And to get in front of, like, all of the, oh my god, it's like, hey, all of our apps aren't going to run when Windows Phone 8 comes out, they came out and just basically said there's going to be a compatibility mode for Windows Phone 7 on 8. So essentially, a desktop mode, a legacy mode on your mobile device. That doesn't sound good. That doesn't bode well, because, like, on my desktop, with my, 8 cores and 16 gigs of RAM and solid-state hard drive, I don't care if there's 2 operating systems or 2 VMs running.
Yeah.
On my mobile phone? No. That sounds like I'm gonna...
It depends on how
you're gonna have to make compromises.
burn!
It sounds like you're gonna have to make compromises for a mobile device, and you're not going to have as good as experience as the hardware could deliver, because it has to kind of like walk 2 worlds, and it has to switch between them in a way that the user, God, I hope the user doesn't have to, like, go into Windows 7 compatibility mode to see your Windows 7 apps or something. I hope they don't do that.
It seems like something, it doesn't sound that dire. And maybe I have a Droid, you've had a Droid, you've had an iPhone, like, they're capable of quite a bit. And Windows Phone 7 had some, pretty good minimum hardware requirements, and I can't imagine that it would be that clunky. Not that it's going to be perfect, but,
But it does add to the overhead of the OS, and to compensate, it will add to the hardware specs, of like, hey, you're going to have this min runtime system.
Surely that would only come into play when you're running a Windows Phone 7 application.
But, for it to work smoothly to the user, it's going to have to work fine both ways. And so it's legacy code. It's like, hey, it's the second version of your phone, and you already have legacy code because you switched the platform majorly. Now, I didn't hear anything come out about this, about a managed UI, a managed layer into the DirectX. I still blows my mind that they're going to tell game developers it's DirectX C++ or nothing, or like, just re-implement everything in JavaScript. That they're not going to have a game framework layer managed. Like, I'm not saying like XNA, but a managed wrapper or interface into the DirectX stuff. I will be shocked if that makes it to release.
Scuttlebutt
Scuttlebutt 2 is that Microsoft has hit the panic button internally on Windows 8. Like, the reception is not the reception they were expecting. Internally, Windows 7 is now being identified as a failure, as not a success.
Wait, Windows 8 or Windows 7?
Windows 7 mobile. Windows Phone 7. Is like, okay, that thing isn't doing well. We're admitting internally now in Microsoft that was a fuck up. And it's like, yeah, you have like 2% market share. You had greater market share when it was Windows 6.5 mobile versus iPhone than you did with Windows Phone 7 and iPhone.
Which is sad because Windows Phone...
Yeah. I think the Windows Phone 7 issues and market share suffer more from execution on marketing and rollout than software and hardware, and even the fucked up marketplace. But yeah, so they're worried that this Windows 8 marketplace and all this stuff they're pushing, they're going to make the same mistakes. That's just scuttlebutt rumor, and, like, I can't, like, quote a source or anything, but that's what I'm hearing from people that I would know that would second or third hand information say going on over there.
I guess it shouldn't be that surprising because, they presented a desktop OS with Metro as the primary, UI, and I mean, what do you expect?
You think it would be obvious.
Like, what alternate reality does that...
Well, I think what they have is you have a corporate culture of yes men. And, you get in line with the vision and like you don't buck the trend because you'll be squashed, if you go against this senior VP who has his agenda. And so, in effect, what you get is people will not bubble up negative feedback. And so expect, if this is true, and what I'm hearing is true, expect some programs to start that will seek to gain non-Microsoft people and people's like, hey, just general public, you want to sign up for a beta program of X? Come on in. We want to get you on the beta program of X to kind of like pierce through that yes men barrier.
That's the good, like...
Yeah. So, but...
Unfortunately,
that is like, I don't think this shit's... I'm going to say, like, I'm only going to give it a 50-50 shot. Windows 8 releases this year.
Really? Well, I can see that getting pushed back.
I'm going to say, like, this is the mode you're in right now. If you're trying to design the OS at this point, you still have major design questions to answer or rewrite. Yeah, I'm gonna say you're not making this year. You're not. You might get a beta out again, but yeah, it's not shipping this year, I think, and that's gonna hurt. That's gonna hurt if they miss holiday sales on Windows 8, because then it's gonna really be like a whole another year before they can really capitalize on sales.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, they're not doing so hot in the market share. The Mac Air is doing a serious dent to the percentages of Windows PC sales versus Mac sales. Hopefully the Ultrabooks that are now coming out that were shown at CES this year, when they start to hit the consumer market, there'll be some viable alternatives. So you don't have to buy a Mac Air if you want an Ultrabook. You can get
What company is doing the Ultrabook?
Just about every company has an Ultrabook.
Okay.
Everybody has a thin Mac Air competitor. Okay. And, there's varying, some doing it right, some, solid body aluminum, they're really like trying to compete. So, hopefully that will level that landscape. But in the meantime, it's not a pretty time.
No.
Not a pretty time. All right, so where was I in my news list? Humble Bundle. Did you get this, Dylan?
Yes, I did.
Humble Bundle comes to the Android.
It yet.
How did that work? Is it side loading the apps on the Android, or did you get some Android store download link?
No, you actually, you get the email, you open it up on your Android, you click on the link, and then from there you can just click download and it'll download.
So you have to turn on that install apps from non-marketplace locations. And okay, so I was wondering how they went about it. I mean, because people are like, why don't they do a Humble Bundle for iOS? And it's like, come on, guys, that's way too locked down. Like, Apple might make that possible, but
I think it would be...
Apple would have to add something. It's not in there.
And that's opening up the floodgate. Like, that's precedent right there.
This is the first Humble Bundle I didn't buy, though, because if you weren't getting it to get it on Android, it's not that compelling of a bundle. It's kind of interesting. I wonder how this one will end up ranking against the other Humble Bundles, like in terms of sales. You know, will this one be as successful? Will they do more Humble Bundles? It's kind of interesting. I like the idea, but
it works for games that have both PC and Android versions.
Yeah,
but,
which
what
they
happens when you decide to do that for a bunch of games that are just Android? That might be pretty cool, depending on what they got.
But you haven't played any of them yet, for any comment.
Nope, not yet.
The best team for gaming inside Microsoft.
The best team for gaming is
for game developers inside of Microsoft. Windows Azure team dropped a new version of the Windows Azure Toolkit for social games. So while you're not getting shit from your XNA team, or even like an idea of when you might get shit from your XNA team, Windows Azure team is giving you a
confirmation
toolkit.
that there will be nothing else from...
Check out what this thing gives you, okay? So this is basically a cloud service that you could run in Azure to support your back-end framework for your game. And in the toolkit, you get some sample games. You get authentication system for your game, so you can handle logins and accounts, leaderboards, friend system within the game, user profiles, invites and notifications, and then you get some tests and JavaScript unit testings and things like that. All that they're giving you. They're giving you the API hooks of just like, here you go, just call these methods. We've worked it all out for you to cloud enable your game and get all that done in there. Like the next step is like, here's your save game routine, here's your, and kicking out. And I think it's damn hot. I mean, that's awesome. I think that's excellent. I really want to send that to the XNA team and going, what the fuck, guys? Why is the Windows Azure team dropping all this cool, awesome shit for gaming? What the hell have you guys done?
Is this like .NET API or what's the...
No.
Like
so it's a REST API so that you could integrate it into any mobile platform. They give you examples, I think, in like PHP, JavaScript, and a bunch of other... So the thing is the Windows Azure team wants you to use Azure.
They don't care what your front end is.
And they really don't care. Azure runs Apache. Azure runs Hadoop. Hadoop is the Apache Foundation open source data warehousing software. I mean, that's got to royally piss off the SQL Server guys because, they have all those reporting services.
Yeah.
But Azure wants you to run Azure, and Azure team has basically told the company, and their stance is, in the cloud space, you will not win by trying to tie us to the Microsoft platform. If we try to limit ourselves to the Microsoft platform, we won't win. We have a good offering. We have stability. I mean, they trump Amazon Azure. I mean, the Amazon S3 and cloud services. And the reliability of their data services, how they've built their data centers. I mean, where Amazon has independent nodes, Microsoft nodes are connected by Microsoft Fiber. If you need to transfer data between two cloud nodes in Microsoft, between, say, Chicago and Austin, you're traveling on a Microsoft closed network. They've laid their own fiber across the world, and you're not going out on the internet, and you don't pay internet travel fees. Whereas in Amazon you would. Microsoft has a CDN worldwide that you could, Content Delivery Network is what that stands for. And you flip a bit and bam, you're replicated worldwide content. And it's literally go in the admin, flip a switch, and you're replicated around the world. You have to do nothing else. Their control panel is slick. I'm really blown away by Azure. I'm really impressed by it. You can upload VMs on your own, so as long as you can create a VM, you can upload that VM and just run that. So instead of running the VMs that they give you, you can do that. But it's really impressive what these guys are doing, and I think I need to grab and play with like the social kit because we keep talking about social gaming ideas and like what we might do in a mobile setting. And if they keep this shit up, it's like
that's a tool.
fuck, like the whole back end's written for us. you know, or enough of the back end that we could just hook our pieces into it. I mean, we don't have to worry about the leaderboards, friends, invites, you know, that's crazy. User profiles, authentication, that's awesome. That is wonderful, that all of that is there. And they have examples and it's cross-platform. So, Zynga's in the news again. So, this is where, like, they become, like, psycho level of crazy, right? Like, the person, you know, it's like, oh no, you're insane.
Oh, you've moved past eccentric and now you're insane.
Well, it's like your bad behavior, right? You're doing all these bad shit. You're cloning these games and you're ripping them off. But when you come out with, we've done nothing wrong, and, you know, this is completely normal and fine, and, you know, it's just blind. It's like, I don't think you actually understand. It's like true psychopath. Like, the true psychopath doesn't understand the right and wrong difference anymore. And there's an interview with their design chief, and, like, he sees no problem with what's going on. You know, like, oh, I don't, you know, like, this is just...
This is like the corporate speak version of saying you're a Vatican assassin warlock.
Yeah. And it's interesting to read them just justify it, of like, Doom came out and there were a whole bunch of first-person shooters after that. And it's like, even the guy in the article is like, asking questions like, no, don't you understand the difference between first-person shooters are a genre, and there's a bunch in the genre, and ripping off everything and just changing art assets.
Yeah.
Like, you know, what you guys have done is identical.
I mean, there were a lot of derivative FPSs, but there wasn't, like, one company that made it their thing to, you know...
Yeah, this is literally like, we took your game code,
write hundreds of derivative
changed the
games.
art assets, and put it back out there as our own game. Related to this, I mentioned that one because I couldn't not mention that if I was going to mention this story. Tripletown sues dev over blatant plagiarism. And I forget the name. The latest Yeti Town. Okay, so the makers of Tripletown are suing Yeti Town in court. Now, there's a little... So this is the blatant ripoff. This is it.
Not the Zynga ripoff, I'm assuming.
No, this isn't Zynga. This is another studio ripping off another studio.
If Zynga did it, why not?
And they're going to court
Zynga has
over
a
it
better law.
as this is a blatant ripoff and it is plagiarism, which is an interesting court case because, you know, you kind of have to figure out, like, at what point does it become plagiarism? You know, like, you can't copyright the mechanics and the rules of the game, but when you go so far as to, like, make a checklist of every feature in the game, implement it exactly as that, and just change some art, where, you know...
Dry.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting case to see what the courts come down on as far as... It's like the sampling question in music. You know, like, is a sample... you know,
fair use.
Required, fair use, or is that required to pay royalties? And what constitutes a sample, and what constitutes, like, you know, taking the entire, like, if you take the entire music track from one song and rap over it, like, that's not the same thing as taking, like, a 3-second sample, but where do you draw that line?
It's almost like social games, and I, of course, say this because I don't play social games, and therefore I don't kind of get it. It's almost like they're the level of commodity, you know, where the people will play
this was the point
whichever
in the Zynga,
one.
This is the point in the Zynga guys thing of, like, social gaming is this new genre, and it's just everybody's cloning everybody in the genre because it's kind of
exactly, like,
the new genre.
But there are so many of them, and people are not really attached to any particular brand in a lot of cases. They will move between them. They'll play multiple ones. That's almost to the point of commodity, and, you know, whatever hooks people.
The lawsuit, though, there's an extra level to it. These guys were in talk with the other guys to be acquired, or published the other game or something, and the talks broke down and stopped like the week before they released their game. And Triple Town was not out when they released their Yeti Town or something. And so for it to be this blatant ripoff, it's like you guys looked at all the stuff while it was in development, and copied everything. So there's that level of it too. So it may not get a clean court ruling on whether or not this level of ripoff is legal or not, because it may just come to the merit of the case of like, no, you violated, you were in breach of contract, you entered a contract or an assumption where like, hey, we're negotiating to buy you guys out, publish your game, whatever it was for, steal all their ideas, and then go publish them. You can get, there's other laws that will be in effect for that. So that may not get that, but it may.
Sort of spy.
It could.
Social
Sometimes
games.
the judges will write an opinion, and the opinion won't affect to the ruling, but it would just be like, hey, this is an interesting case, and it will give you some insight into like what the judge was thinking. Like he might put down some thoughts. He won't actually say it one way or the other because he doesn't have to. But he'll give you some leanings, and then, scholars that look at that and they interpret that as far as like, okay, the courts are saying they lean toward, this, but
It just seems like, again, I don't understand social gaming because I don't really get into it, but it just seems like, huge market out there. The people at the top are really successful, but it just sounds insane. Like you said, that level of insanity everywhere.
yeah. Yeah.
You have to be crazy to get into that space.
Next one up, company Parcel Gamer wants to share used game profits with publishers. They're not the first ones to propose something like this. I think even GameStop said like, hey, if the publishers would sit down at the table with us, we would work out something for used game royalties or something like that. We haven't talked a whole lot, I think, on our podcast yet,
No.
really about this thing. So essentially what you have here is the first sale doctrine called into question here, okay? And the first sale doctrine basically says if I buy something, I have the right to sell that. So if I buy a book, I can sell that book. And that's what allows a used bookstore to operate. And, I've done a lot of thinking over the last couple of months of like trying to figure out where do I really stand on this, okay? Because I think the first sale doctrine is going to have to get updated for the digital age. And I'm actually even kind of wondering of like, do we need a digital first sale doctrine? And let me back that up with like, by default, like my immediate initial place was like, yes, that's our right. We have the right to, I bought something, I have the right to sell it.
There is a difference between on-disc games and then download games. So.
Exactly. So there's a physical thing that I sold that book, and I no longer have it. I purchased the book, and I no longer have it. And so I purchased this physical game, and now I no longer have it. So there's only one copy. There hasn't been multiple copies. In the digital world, how do you facilitate?
I almost think
that
downloads
kind of,
that's another issue entirely.
Well, I mean, for me, though, to have that right in the digital world, I have to give you my digital copy in such a way that I don't retain a copy.
Right. And that is a feature that, Microsoft, Sony, Steam would have.
I think Steam could do it the fastest.
If they wanted.
If they wanted.
But then there's also the thing of like, hey, the artist who wrote the book, I bought the book for $25. The author got $1 or $2. Okay? Most of the price of the book was in the physical book. It was the publisher taking their cut, the bookstore taking their cut, the printing press, all of that. And so when I resell that to you, and I sell my book for $10 to you, I'm not really taking anything from the artist, because the artist wasn't getting a whole lot anyway. and, it's not there. But in the digital world, I buy the book on Amazon for 99 cents. I got it on sale on Amazon. $2.99. Paid $3 for the book. Amazon took a third, and the artist got their $2 still. So the artist still got their $2. But I only paid $3. Am I right in saying, like, I have the right, like, I need the right to resell this thing I bought for, I had a mocha latte tonight that was $4, right?
Yeah.
Like, am I in the right to demand the right to resell something digitally when its cost is really just in, the cost actually is correct. The artist got $2 in the old world, they get $2 in the new world. I'm paying a whole hell of a lot less because, all the other middle management that was involved is gone. So I can see a big argument of like, no, just you buy the book and give the guy, his cut so that, we can do this because the cost has come so ridiculously down that the amount that I'm paying, that I have problems like trying to stand from a pragmatic standpoint. So from like a altruistic standpoint, I'm like, first right of sale, that's our right. That's constitutional interpreted, copyright law gives us that right. Copyright in and of itself is an affront to the First Amendment, and it is an accepted exception to the First Amendment because we have to, have some protection on, the author's work for them to guarantee that they get paid. But, it's like, yeah, I just can't say anything. It was free speech because that speech may be copyrighted and I may have to pay royalties,
right.
If the speech is a song or something. So I get that. But then there was like this first sale document of like compensation for this and, taking away a right and all that. It was kind of a balance, but it doesn't work. And then somebody pointed out on the Bombcast today, PC game sales.
Yeah.
So there's no used market for PC game sales because they all are DRM'd and they have a key, and once you use that, I use my StarCraft key.
It's dead.
It's dead. You can't use this disc for anything else now.
What's surprising though
and
is
that hasn't hurt the PC market. Like there's been no backlash of like, now that we have no used game sales, the PC market is dead.
Yeah. What's funny is back in the day when they were, there wasn't quite as much DRM, or at least it wasn't restricted to X number of installs, you could still, you could still find places that would do used PC game sales, and there was never that issue of, well, you could just crack it, and,
Now, I think there's a couple other things at play, though, that I'm not completely on the side of the publishers, and the game studios, because there's bad actions on their part. One is, especially in the console market, the price collusion. Okay, every game is downloadable at $15, on Xbox, and $60 retail disc, and they stay at those prices regardless of what the gamers value that game at, Like, they don't allow the market to decide the game prices. They're trying to artificially bump them up. And it's like, well, the reason the used games are so critical is because the game was shit. It got shit reviews. It's worth $5 in a bargain bin, And GameStop will, based on the amount they get trade in, adjust their price. Now, I know, like, GameStop, when the new game comes out, it's like the worst thing. They're going to give you, like,
$5.
$10 for your latest game. And then turn around and sell it for $55.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say $5 off.
But that's because they know the game will sell at $55. When the game stops selling at that, like GameStop drops the price to what the market bears. They're dicks too. They raise the price. So, like Assassin's Creed Brotherhood came out, and they're going to sell at $55. It's going to fall out of fashion. They're going to drop it down there, boom, boom. Now it's like $25. Now it's like $20. Now it's like $15, okay? Then Assassin's Creed Revelations is launching next month. And they're going to take the Brotherhood and they're going to raise the price on that back to $25. Because there'll be a lot of guys coming in of like, I really need to jump in on the Assassin's Creed, or I didn't play the last one. And so I hate them for raising the price, but they are fluctuating it with demand. They do have a database and they are doing that, whereas the publishers just want to have this lock-in of $60. And I feel like if you took away the used game market, they would not have the pressure to drop prices. Because what I found is when Assassin's Creed Brotherhood drops to $25 at GameMarx or at GameStop, you can walk into Best Buy and find it new for $25 because they're trying to remain competitive with the used game sales market. And it's like, that's good because that's the market value of your game is. And you know what? Between the two, I'll buy the new one. And you'll get your cut and we're all happy. But if you shut down the used game store, you're not going to do that. You're going to keep it jacked up there for as long as you can. Even though, at the end of the day, you'll probably make less money, you're greedy fucks, and that's what you'll do.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a really complicated situation, and like you're saying, from the different angles, there's no one right answer that's fair to everyone. But a solution like this, you know, where the used game companies are working with the publishers, there's at least, hopefully, there's some mutual respect between them. Hopefully that's also being given to the players, and, you know, a better solution will come out of that than just, you know, screw
heads.
The rest of you, I've got mine.
Right.
Yeah, the corporate heads think we're all dumb fucks anyway, but...
Now, I think one of the things when they were talking about the PC market, and like how the PC market's gone DRM, serial keys, and just killed the used market, what they didn't really mention is the piracy side of used games.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to do that, you're going to increase the rate of piracy, casual piracy.
Yeah.
Exponentially.
Yeah. And it's
well, heck, you can just go on the internet and download these things. And
GameCopyWorld.com will crack any PC game you want. Which a lot of times I've gone there because I don't want to put the fucking disc in. I go to Game Copy World and I download the no disc crack because it's a fucking PC game. I install it to my hard drive. I hate the idea that I need a disc. I hate the idea I need a disc on my Xbox 360. I installed the disc, and you have my account, and you should be able to know that this is the account that installed it to disc and let me play my damn game. Make me put the disc in like once a week or some shit. Like, hey, put that disc back in, just so it's not like being passed around friends or something. But like the odds of that happening, like I can pass the disc around friends anyway. Like when I'm done with the game.
You know, this installation ID was fired up here. It was also fired up here at the same time. One of those is getting invalidated.
Make it like a one-time use thing. Like, hey, here's your serial key to install to the hard drive and not have to have the game to play it. Once you've used that, it's gone. And you know what we have? It's the bullshit on, like, the EA Origin service in the games where, like, even now in the single-player games, you have to enter the key to play the game. Like, to get all the content, you know, like, to get all the levels of the game. You know, like they did this with Batman Arkham Asylum. To get the Catwoman levels, okay?
Oh, yeah, you had to buy it.
You had to enter the key that came with the game. That's single-player shit. We're not talking about multiplayer online. The bullshit line before was like, we have servers to run, which
Yes.
first of all, I was like, hold on, stop.
There was an issue.
What the fuck you have servers to run? I'm paying gold $60 a year for the servers to run. So you don't need money for the servers to run. Somebody's lying and needs to stop charging, okay? But now it's for single-player content. There's no servers to run. And it's just a fuck over, like, if you go in and buy Arkham City used, you'll never get that content. Or you'll have to pay $10. Yeah. You have to pay $10 to do it.
Yeah.
Dead Space pisses me off. Every time I was playing Dead Space, it would pop up with
I would feel better with about that setup, you know, where you had to pay $10 if you bought it used, as long as they were honest about what it was for. I would feel a little bit better if it's like the servers thing.
I don't like it at all because, like, say you're in our family, and there's more than one of you that likes to play the same game.
But 2 Xboxes.
No, well, just one Xbox.
Just one Xbox. Sometimes it's tied to profile.
Yeah.
Really?
Exactly, because when all that EA shit started going down, all the Dragon Age was under his EA shit. So I lost my shell, I lost progress,
No, you didn't lose it because of EA. You lost it because Microsoft they fucked up transferring the licenses.
Yeah.
And when I bought a new console and did the hard drive shit, they sent all the shit to, it was my third console. One red ringed. Replacement. Reauthorize the replacement. Then I buy a new one. Reauthorize the new one. Copy the shit over. They actually authorized the red ringed console. And, at that point, we're fucked. We're fucked because they're like, nope, you only get to do that once a year. sorry, we can't reset that. I even went through support. Oops, yep, that sucks. We can't reset that. And it's like, yeah, so, and that happened to everything. You couldn't go in and play Rock Band without loading in my profile. All the Rock Band tracks. Microsoft has to get that shit fixed. That's just such a pain in the ass.
Yeah, if it's on your end, we should get a freebie.
I mean, they clamp down on that shit so hard, they're just pissing off valid users.
One would hope this being like the first console generation where downloadable stuff is really big, that, you know, next generation they will
go
build
into
smarter.
Again, the used market and all this shit. You go into Xbox and you pull up Batman Arkham City.
Yeah.
Game on demand. You could buy it, Batman Arkham City, on the Xbox, game on demand. I think it's like $40-$50.
Yep.
It's $15 on Steam. You know?
Steam, yeah, is... Then again, I don't know. I wonder
and it's
how
probably $20 at GameStop. So this is why I'm not like in favor of like, you know, shutting down the used stores and the sales, because it's like they're trying to start to sell this shit at ridiculously. If you go into Games on Demand, it is ridiculously overpriced there.
Yeah.
And I would buy quite a bit on Games on Demand because, you know, I usually pay games far out of favor, you know, well after they're no longer new. And when you do that shit and you put it in there for $40, I go to GameStop, you get nothing. So if you would price it $25, you'd get something. But because you're pricing it $40, you get nothing. And, you know, I think that's going to continue. I don't think the key stuff is going to work because there's a game coming out, and I can't remember the name of the game, and it's like an EA game, and they're actually advertising it's not using Origin. You will not be required to have Origin to play any part of this game. And it's like, okay, when it becomes a feature on the box that it's not using your shit,
that's a problem.
you kind of got to admit you have a problem, okay? You know?
Yes.
When you're worried about... And they even come forward and say, because we want to get as many people as possible checking out and playing this game. That's like the second half of that sentence. And it's like, dude, fuck, man. Like, can you not realize what you just said?
We want piracy.
Yeah, it's like, well, it's not saying we want piracy. It's saying, if we put this extra DRM bullshit in there, our sales are going to go down.
Because people rebel a bit against
Well, I don't even know if it's the piracy will go up. The piracy might be a constant between both versions. Less people will buy it. And so we're not going to put it in there so more people buy the game.
That's sad.
Wrapping up news. So, Dylan.
Yes.
If you made one of the hit indie games, I guess the hit indie game of 2011, because Minecraft is kind of pre-2011. VVV. What would you follow it up with?
I have no idea.
You?
You would follow it up with Chat.
Chat.
Chat. An online, free-to-play cat MMO. You log in, and you're a cat.
What do you do as a cat?
You
knock things off the table?
You meow.
Pee on the carpet?
You can purr. You can catch mice.
Beg for food?
You can talk to other cats. You can screech.
Which drove his cat insane for
It's
a
a
while.
chat room where everybody's cats. Not making this up. And it comes from the developer who made VVVVVV.
This is the point where all the memes are coming back to bite us. As
Basically, what do you do?
civilization.
You troll the fucking internet. I think this is a massive troll of the internet.
Yes.
I will release a game where you play as a cat. And cats don't do shit, so you won't do shit because you're playing as a cat.
That's weird.
Blinks the Time Sweeper. Blinks, I played Blinks. Blinks was actually kind of cool. It was a time control mechanic, original Xbox game. IGN rebooted their Next Game Boss indie dev reality series. So they bring in I thought they bring in 6 studios, and they're just different groups, guys you never heard of. They're indie studios. I think they get like a week to build their game. So they're bringing them into a studio, like, hey, you got a week, and of course it's a reality show, so every day you have a competition, and we bring in celebrity judges, and they will judge you, and then one team won't make it. And then we'll just, every day of the week, we'll eliminate one, and at the end of the week, there'll be one team, and it's a shitty prize, too. It's like $10,000. You know, but it's only a week. At first I was like, $10,000? That's fucking insult. And I was like, okay, it's just a week, you know, so you're not going to be able to crank out a masterpiece in a week, and $10,000 is worth it. If it was like Dream Build Play level of competition, and it's like at the end of it you get $10,000 is the grand prize, like, that's bullshit. That's a full-on game. People spent a year on that, and you need to respect the effort on that. So I watched the first episode, and I was kind of, I wasn't even going to talk about this, I was going to skip on it, but now I'm hooked, I'm going to watch it. Merely because these teams come in, there's 2 brothers that are older, and they're like, hey, because they have to do the reality TV show of sitting in front of the camera
and explain
shit. And like, yeah, we're older, and we think that's our advantage, and, because we have all this experience and all that. There's a dude that reminds you of like a Jonathan Blow kind of hipster developer. He's one-man team. There's a couple 3-man teams, 2 guys and a girl, 2 guys and a girl. And then there was like this young team, 2 guys and a girl, and they came in with just such an over-the-top braggadocio, we're just gonna kick ass.
How young are we talking?
And we're talking like high school, maybe in college.
9 kids.
And they're like, we're gonna kick all these old timers because we're fresh and we have all new ideas, and that's the shit. And I watched that and I go,
there are no new ideas.
Exactly. And I'm like, okay, now I gotta watch this episode to see what you fucking guys are gonna call your new idea. So they get their first challenge. They have to design a game. They don't have to build it. Make a game design. They only have like an hour or 2 because there's a whole bunch of orientation, and they basically have an hour or 2 to build a presentation for the game. So basically, sales pitch, the publisher, on the game idea, and your one rule for this challenge is, it's a single input game.
Single input, like touchscreen or something, or?
Well, I guess it did go into detail, okay? But it's like the user will have a single input into the game, so it was kind of like a single button or single touch, or like they didn't say it has to be like one button. So yeah, you could like, because some of them went like touch based, and this is what happens when you touch. Like it'll be a touch game, mobile, and it'll do this. And some were like, okay, it's a 1-button game, and you push the 1 button, it does this, and things like that. So I'm like, okay, I want to see what the Wonder Kids, what their creative action. But I'll save them for the end because they actually were kind of late in the first team gets up, and I think the first one they did like some kind of like breakout game. So like your one control was like moving back and forth. That's all you could do. You move back and forth, and you bounce stars on the paddle. You just kind of keep stars bouncing, and then the stars would split, and you just keep trying to bounce more, and now you're trying to bounce more, and then it would get crazy, when you're trying to do it. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. The Jonathan Blow hipster dude, he came up with some, like, weird, like, okay, here's a clock. I don't even fucking understand how it worked. It was like, holy shit, dude, you're on another plane, and I want to see that game when it's done, because I don't really understand it. But, like, it would start out and represent a day, and, like, as it revealed time, it showed you the graphic as it went around, and it was like getting up in the morning and having breakfast and lunch, and then at 5 o'clock you realize you can't get into this building because you don't have the key. The key was actually in the morning, so you can like move your cursor around the time and like rewind it so that you get the key in the morning and then live out the day. And then like the next clock represents a year, and the next clock is representing seasons, and the next clock is like, he's like talking since the beginning of time mechanic, and it's like, yeah, I just want to see whatever the hell you're coming up with.
I'm not even sure how
you're dropping acid,
could be a game.
And I know it, but yes, make that.
It seems like, I don't know, maybe I'm oversimplifying it. It sounds kind of like a point-and-click adventure.
And no, because it's like one button mechanic. So like, I don't understand how you're like getting the key. You're moving the mouse in circles to make time go forward or backwards.
Unless you're supposed to stop.
So you're not actually controlling
off.
anything and clicking anything, because that would break the rules. Even the judges, when they were talking about it, like, I really don't understand that game design, but I'm super interested in it, you know? The other guys, I mean, all these things were like crazy, like interesting stuff that people were coming up with, and I was really impressed. And then the young kids get up, and you know what they have invented?
What?
The force scroller. And the one button is to jump, the impossible game. That's what they came up with. That's we're so fucking awesome original. And they were eliminated in the first round. And what's funny is, like, 2 of the team members, the ones that weren't talking all the shit, they're like, of course we hope we didn't go out early, but it's been fun, and it's kind of cool, and I think we learned a lot, and it was good to hear feedback from the press. And the other guy's not saying a damn word. He's just standing there and just shut. It's like, he wants to say shit, but, like, either they edited it, or he just didn't say anything and just walked there without saying a thing. And I'm like, yes, I love that. Because that's the thing with, like, American Idol, right? I don't want to call in an American Idol and vote for the guy to win. I'm going to call into American Idol and vote somebody off. You're voted off the island. That's what I want.
Of America, they would,
right?
If they go down in their ratings, that's all they do. They just say, okay, now you downvote people.
So I'm going to watch a couple more episodes and see how this goes. With that. The last item that I have up for quote-unquote news isn't really news. It's going to be like our email segment, but we don't actually get email questions. So this is going to be a question I took from the forums, but I think it'd be cool to discuss. And the guy in the forum asked, what should the project scope be for a one-man developer? Like, and we've talked about this some in the past. We're not a one-man development team, but we've talked about getting sucked into larger scoped projects than you can actually complete.
Yeah.
And it's really important to scope yourself small so that you complete things, because you really want to ship a lot of games.
Well, the problem is, especially when you go into anything like this, you're tempted to create like the one, magnum opus, this is going to be awesome. When really, you may have a few of those, but it takes a few of the smaller ones to get going.
You have to build up your school, because if you dive in and you try to create your opus right off the bat, it's going to fall on its face. It's not going to do well, and you may
Probably not even going to happen.
You may never complete it, and it may burn you out from doing indie games altogether, because your hope and dream and your awesome vision failed, and it's just too hard to recover from, and you never go on.
Well, I think it's interesting, like the Game Boss thing you were talking about. They're given a week, so all of these ideas you're talking about are really, really simple, and it's hard to, especially coming from, starting off in console gaming and stuff like that, because, things like Super Mario Brothers and Zelda and Final Fantasy, even if they're old, they got a lot of moving parts. And you kind of have to force yourself to. And you don't realize that
until you kind of dive in to really appreciate how many moving parts were in these older, what you might think of as simple games are not that simple. So I would say, first of all, stick to 2D. Yeah. Unless you have a serious 3D background already, stick to 2D. You don't need to go outside of 2D. And then I would even say for your first couple of games, stick to core arcade mechanics. Like, don't go for anything more branching for your first couple games than, a shoot 'em up, or a breakout variant, or, like, you can vary it up a little bit, but at its soul, the game is just a point game, high score list, play it again, no story, no pack-ups, power-ups, all that kind of stuff. Like, just focus on that core.
The essence.
Because you need to ship a game. You need to go through all that life cycle steps and get it out there. I mean, the greatest thing that we ever did was decide to ship Inca blocks.
Yes, definitely.
We learned a lot from that, and the game commercially flopped. Guess what? Your first couple ones probably are going to commercially flop. I mean, the odds of you hitting it big right out the gate are nil. So it's good that we did that so that we could take that back and learn. And you want to get a couple more out there. And then you kind of like, I know how to do collision detection because I've done it several times. I know how to handle state in a game. I know how to do my menus. I know how to do all these different parts to where those you can just quickly bang out, and that leaves you the time on your game project to add in the larger, and I'm doing an RPG. Now I'm adding in, more features, and focus on that. Because there's two dangers. One is you put a lot of effort into something, you ship it, it fails, and that hurts. Two is you never ship it because you get burned out in trying to figure out how to do a menu, or you're doing this large project.
You're trying to do too many things. There's no milestone.
Well, without experience. It's not trying to do too many things. Trying to do too many things without the experience of doing those things. Like, I don't understand how to do state. Well, you're going to rewrite game state so many times that you may never finish your project.
Too, though, there are those rewarding milestones where if you're trying to do this huge project, you get just the basic gameplay down, and it's not good enough. Like, that's not good enough for you because you want more if you're in that mindset.
And you got to learn at some point you have to ship it.
And honestly, I'm speculating here, and I this would probably not be my first choice, but it seems like I imagine people who develop for mobile first have an easier time of this, just because mobile forces you to kind of reframe what you think of as a game. Like, it reframes the development process, and you're like, okay, I got a touch screen. There's a limited number of things I can do.
Please, dear God, don't put a D-pad on the touchscreen.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's an option, but that's not... That's not even the most obvious option.
I went to get an RPG because I figured out there's got to be some damn good RPGs on iOS. And this Xenonia, something came back.
I downloaded that.
Of like, oh, this is the big one, and it had a damn touch pad, and it was so damn touchy I couldn't control my guy. My guy kept like walking way past things that I fucking uninstalled it. And I'm like, screw this. I'm glad there was a light version and I didn't buy it. And then I was like, well, no, actually before that, I was just in the mood to I want to play a serious game on my iPhone that I can come back and play. And I was like, all the Final Fantasies have been released on there. And because it's menu-based combat, I probably won't mind.
Well, you've got the overworld maps.
As much, right? Even if it's a D-pad.
Okay, yeah.
But, I mean, the combat, action combat's not going to work. And we've talked about this several times where I've not played the Final Fantasies and I don't really dig the JRPGs. And, I may get into it, or at least let me try. They want fucking $10 for Final Fantasy 1, 2, or 3. I was like, fuck you, I'm not giving you $10.
I have bought those games enough times, I'm not going to buy them again. I do find...
I haven't ever bought those games, and fuck you, I'm not paying $10 for Final Fantasy, which is probably a shit port to begin with.
The real fans should have, a grandfather keys, you get 1 or 2 downloads.
Here's my PS1 copy. Here's my Game Boy Advance copy. I want a free download. Yeah. Here's my Nintendo cartridge.
If you have 2 of the 3 ways that you can get this, you can get the
achievement
download free.
Unlocked.
Yeah. And any other thing for scope? I mean, small is key. Small is key. And when you're doing your small project, I would say not to get sucked into a lot of frameworks. If it's your early, okay, so we're talking your first or second. Stay away from the other frameworks just to kind of get the, do it yourself once. I know this is the kind of math thing that you hate of do long division, then fucking do the short division or use a calculator. But work it out long division so you understand the raw concepts they're going by. Because when you grab a framework, it abstracts things from you, and you'll get into trouble when the abstraction breaks down, and you don't know what to do in the edge case that the framework doesn't handle, but you need it for your game. You're just gonna be lost. All of a sudden, it's gonna run out, and you're lost. This happens all the time with Silverlight developers, because Silverlight abstracts so much of what's going on underneath it. If you don't spend the base time understanding how the controls are created and creating your own controls, when a control doesn't do what you think it should do, you're lost, man. You have no clue of why that's not rendering correctly. And yet, if you have that background of how the controls work, you could go, oh, well, that's because the sizing pass is happening before the layout is set here, so I need to give it a hint as to how I want it laid out so it'll pass that through, like that makes more sense. And the same thing I think applies in the game, like, implementing some control, implementing game state, implementing a screen manager, implementing, these kind of things. And it'll also make you appreciate the frameworks.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, I find that kind of thing fun, and it's kind of like, I know, if I do it long enough, it's going to lose its novelty, but,
I mean, James Silva in his book shows you implementing a particle system, like, in the third or fourth chapter. It's pretty damn, early. And he basically cautions you of, like, you can have a whole lot of fun building particle systems and hit it and move on. Like, don't get sucked into the trap of, like, making really awesome particle systems. Excuse me. But, yeah, so, I think that would be my main thing. Keep it simple. Keep it 2D. First games, stay away from frameworks, and make it an arcade shoot-'em-up type game or a simple Pong, a simple game that you could play in the arcade.
Yeah, even maybe like a single-screen puzzle game. Like, keeping it on a single screen eliminates so much complexity.
It does. And the important thing is for you to ship games and learn the other things that are universal. Menu screen, screen manager, game state, get those down, and then beginning adding on the things that you want for your other games. And in the meantime, you'll be getting experience of what works and what doesn't with your games that go out, and that'll only make the ideas that you want to do execute even better. So that wraps up that. Our topic this week, like I said at the beginning of the show, is tools. And we're not going to have, the reason we did a lot of news and I pulled that one up, because I don't think this is going to be a lot of time spent. There's not a lot of debate or discussion here. But first thing first, number one that is all developers need to be using is source control. This is an absolute must. You need to be using a source control system. And it's beyond just backups, okay? It is a mental log of your work. It is the ability to go back and remember how you did something, that you then change that system, and then you realize you don't want that. And it's not even like a case of like, I'm going to go to a previous version of the file and grab it. Because I usually don't do it that often, but I usually do check the history log and read the code of how I had it, and then go, oh, that's what I broke. Or this is the way I had it before, and I can go back to do that. There are a couple different flavors of source control out there, and the new hotness is the distributed version control systems. And if you're a small shop or you're a shop of one or two, developers, it's really not a big deal differences. When you start to get larger, the differences play in, but I would say I would recommend starting off with Mercurial. You can go to HGinit, okay? HGinit.com, and Joel Spolsky has a wonderful introduction, both for new to source control and has used Subversion. So,
and that's really a thing. Like, if you're new to the concept of source control, the first time you use it, it's like, what the hell is this? I don't get it. And then after you use it, suddenly it becomes clear.
Mercurial also has Tortoise HG, which is a free Windows app and Linux app that you can download, and Mac too. You can get it on all platforms. That gives you a nice file menu for dealing with all of the code committal and checking in and all that kind of stuff, and rolling back and branching. Just get nice GUI interfaces. Git lags behind in the GUI interface, so a lot of people might use Git, G-I-T, or recommend that. And I would say, like, that's not a good first one to start with. I would recommend Mercurial is more approachable. Bitbucket, which has already been mentioned. Bitbucket offers free Mercurial and Git now, actually. They do both. You can pick Git or Mercurial private repositories. You have no excuse now. It's private. It's not a public repository. It's free, so that your code making a zip file of your directory is not a backup. Okay? Now, the cool thing about Mercurial and Git, the cool thing about the distributed source control is when you check in, when you do commits, okay, it has a local copy of the database. And when you make commits, it makes those commits to this local database. So it's lightning fast. It doesn't take any instance at all because it's all local. And then, at the end of the night, you do a push command. And the push command will push it up to another server. So then you can push it up to Bitbucket. And now you're covered. You have a log history, okay? And because it's so fast, I commit all the frickin' time. I get one little piece working, commit. Add the next little piece, commit. Add the next little piece, oh shit, I broke something, I can roll back. And I have a nice log of every change I made. And it's lightning fast and it happens in an instant, so I don't even think about it. It's like Control S. You know, you save often, you commit often. And then at the end of the night, I push up. So now I have this nice change log, but I also have a remote backup. Even if it's just me, I'm covered. I can go to any server and grab my code or any laptop or desktop and continue where I left off. Finally, with Mercurial, you can also get Visual HG, which is a Visual Studio plugin that will sit on top of Tortoise HG so that you can get source control inside of Visual Studio working with it. And now, if you're doing XNA, you're end-to-end covered. Eclipse has plugins as well. If that's what you're using for your, whatever environment that you're using, you probably have some plugins. Subversion is not bad. The only reason distributed has some significant advantages to go with over Subversion. The reason I think we switched more than any other is free Bitbucket.
Yeah, but honestly, it's on a small team, you're probably not going to notice the differences as much, and really Tortoise HG is just much better than
now
Tortoise SV.
Where it really comes into play at a larger level, where awesomeness kicks in at a Mercurial or a Git, at a distributed source control system, is we're using Nick Gravelin's tiled lib. And it does a lot of things I don't like or want for our game. Okay? The way we're approaching and building our game, the assumptions he's built in his parser don't work for us. I don't want to throw the whole damn thing out. I want to write it and change it. Now it's an open source project. I can grab it, make our changes, and we're fine. But what I can do is clone his repository on Bitbucket. So I just tell Bitbucket, clone Nick's. Okay? Now, it keeps a reference of what it was cloned from, right? So then I pull down the clone locally, and I modify it. And then Nick updates his version. I can pull Nick's changes into my modified one. Now, I might have to deal with some conflicts if I've changed shit that he also changed, but sometimes, he improved something else that I hadn't touched, and I could pull that in and keep up to date with it. So I make all my changes, or I improve some things in his code, and I do all that up, and I've got my repository up there. I can now send Nick a pull request and say, hey, man, I've been working on your library, and I've added these things, and they're useful for me. I don't know if you want them in your library, but if you do, here's a pull request. Now, he can choose to pull down my code and integrate just the pieces he wants. If he doesn't want everything, he doesn't have to integrate everything. And this is so much better than the whole patch system that, SourceForge used to have, of you had to have patches. Patches had to be run against a specific version in a specific way, and, the project had a way if they wanted you to submit patches. All that's gone. And so if you're working on a system that is in Git or Mercurial already, it's so easy just to go ahead and fork it. Is not a bad word. Fork it is the way. Make your own private copy. Do whatever the hell you want. If the primary project wants it, they can suck your stuff back in. If they don't, then good. You can continue to suck in the primary project and keep the updates. So that's another advantage and a reason for us to go Bitbucket and Mercurial, because it plays nice with some of the open source plugins that we're using. So we'll strongly endorse and recommend Mercurial because there's pretty much a tool that fits in every step of the process that we had for Subversion. Because we use Visual SVN. There's Ankh SVN, which I think was mentioned in chat.
Yeah.
Ankh SVN is free. It's kind of janky in places. That's why I went ahead and paid for Visual SVN, because it was nice and clean. I think, yeah, I went ahead and that was the one I went ahead and paid for, but I never paid for the upgrade. So, like, it upgraded in Visual Studio 2010. You had to upgrade from your... Because I bought the 2005 version. I got a free upgrade to 2008 version, but then I don't get the free to 2010. I have to pay the upgrade fee. But there was a beta released, and I could run the beta in 2010. So I did that for a while. But then it was like, hey, we'll switch to Mercurial. And now, if you have your own server and you want to stick with Subversion, they make a free Visual SVN product, Visual SVN server that you can get, and that you just run the executable on your Windows server, and it will install everything you need to run a Subversion server and give you a little admin tool. So you don't have to worry about setting any of that up. If you want to have your own private server and not run it off of like Bitbucket. But like, man, Bitbucket's doing tape backups and shit, so take advantage of that. That's free. Speaking of backups and assets, there's things that mostly art assets, design documents, notes, scribbles, that you're not going to put into source control. Kind of muddies up the project a little bit.
It's gonna be a large file
and it might be large files, and yeah, you just don't want to deal with all of that in source control, or the designers don't use the source control. Dropbox. Dropbox is a tool that you want to use to fill in this gap. By putting your files into Dropbox, you may not realize this, but Dropbox actually keeps like the last 5 or 6 versions of a file. If you pay, you can even extend that. You can buy and add it and keep more versions of the file. But if you have a version of the file, if you go to Dropbox.com, there's a drop down when you look at the files in your Dropbox, and you could say like, I want the 2 versions old version of this file. But you can share folders among your team in Dropbox, so it makes it real easy for all of us to share the art assets, and the artist can drop in new assets, and I can grab them and integrate them into the game. So Dropbox is definitely a good tool to use that's kind of outside of like, hey, this is a development process. The next thing that you should be using is some kind of project management software. And we are going to heavily endorse Kanban. Okay? Agile Zen is the system we use. You can use Twilio, I think, is Joel Spolsky's system. Both of these have free accounts. I don't know if Twilio is private, or is it all public?
I don't know.
I've never used it. I just know it's a competitive service to Agile Zen. But we've been using Agile Zen. It's free for like one project, one user. So you can get up and running on that. And I think we paid $9 for 3 projects, 3 users.
Yeah. And actually, too, if you're using Bitbucket, if you don't want to share, if you don't want to pay, there's issues list there that you can use to track.
There is an issues list, but that's not a Kanban board. So
it's not.
That's almost a bug report defect tracking good use system, and you might track feature requests, but I'd say that's almost for an open source level thing. I really wouldn't recommend using that for your management system because it's not Kanban. And so the advantage of Kanban is that you have a board with columns that you refer to as lanes. And overall, it represents flow through the system. So in the beginning is stuff you haven't started, and at the end is stuff that is completed and deployed in the game. And then the states in between are, I started working on this, finished working, ready for QA, it's past the QA guy, now it's done and it's in the game and it's working. The rule with Kanban is that you only work on one task at a time, and you have to take it from beginning to end. Okay? So once you start a task, you need to go through all your steps until you consider that task complete. You may not have that many middle steps. That's okay. But all the Kanban systems allow you to define what your lanes are. So I think we just use beginning, working,
backlog ready, working, completed. I think,
and we have it deployed as well. Backlog is the list at the very front, and it's basically for stuff that's not even prioritized, way out in the future, and it may need to be rewritten into smaller tasks because you have to take every task from beginning to end. And
maybe tasks that are kind of dependent on other tasks.
So you may have tasks that are dependent. You may have tasks that are really big, and you need to break them down into smaller tasks so that you can run them through easier. And you want the tasks to be things that you can reasonably sit down and knock out in one sitting. Those are the best, because the magic comes in when you look at the things to do, and they're all like little bite-sized tasks. You can grab one or two of these things when you have an hour, okay? Versus when you have these big, massive feature lists, items to put in, and you look at the list and you're like, whoa, that's fucking huge. And like, implement jetpacks, like, oh shit, that's huge. I gotta get in that hour. I can't start any of this. But if you take implement jetpacks and you break it out into, implement holding the Y button to hover for the jetpack. Put in the sprite sheet for the jetpack. Pixel art design, the jetpack. Any one of these little things all becomes like little smaller independent guys of like, okay, I'm just going to make it so when you hold the Y button, he hovers like he has a jetpack, even though the sprite's not in yet. And then later I'll come back and I'll design it. And then later I'll come back and I'll add the design to the game. And these are independent things. Also, if you have a multi-person team, the idea with Kanban is it's a pull system. So anybody can grab an item that's not started and start working on it. So I do the Y to hover, but then you come along and you grab the sprite sheet bit and start working on it. And I can see that you grabbed it and started it.
Yeah, there's no ownership of tasks decided beforehand. So
you don't spend a lot of time deciding who's going to do what or something. It's like, when you have a moment, here's the stuff that needs to be done. Grab what you think you can knock out and do it. So you definitely need to be using some kind of project management system. You definitely need to be using some kind of source control. We talked at the top of the show about Time Ruler. You also have the Remote Performance Monitor if you're in XNA that you can use. You can download the DirectX SDK and run pics, but you have the Profiler in Visual Studio. But whatever your development environment is, there are performance profiling tools, and you need to spend the time to learn how to use the performance profiling tools of your environment. Because these can save you massive amounts of time when you're trying to find not the crashes in your game, but the slowness in your game. That usually crashes are easy to find. You have a line of code that crashed, and you can find out the state at the time of crash, and then work from there and find out what the problem is. When things just run slow, you don't want to be guessing. You don't want to sit there and go, is it this method? Is it my pixel collision? Is it my text renderer? It's like, what ran slow?
And because you're dealing with so many different frames and usually smooth movement, it's hard to see,
You may have had something slow since day one, but because you didn't have the AI and the monsters and the power-ups and all these other things added, it didn't hurt your framework. But you didn't realize you were already using 90% of that 1/60th of a frame. And then when you add the other stuff and it goes over, you might think it's the stuff you just added, and you spend all this time debugging monster AI, when the truth is, it's like, no, your pixel collision renderer is killing you. So by knowing how to use these performance tools will let you drill into, and like the tools in Visual Studio will tell you what functions are called the most, what functions spend the most time executing, What functions do the most expensive kinds of execution code? What functions create the most garbage? You know, what areas of my code are the worst? The higher level Visual Studio SKUs, if you can get like your hands on Ultimate and things like that, can actually do profiling where they exercise all code paths in your code and actually say like, hey, when, you know, most of the time it's called with like 0 as a parameter, but when you call it with 5, you execute this one path of code that is shit, dude. But you only hit it every now and then, so you may not see it in gameplay, except you just catch this one random slowdown that's hard to test. So, you may not have access to that because, like I said, you have to have like the ultimate level tools for that level of profiling. But it is worthwhile to learn in whatever environment. If you're doing iOS games, there's tools. If you're doing Android games, there's tools. If you're doing JavaScript games, find the tools to measure performance that people use, learn to use them, and then use them in your own game. It will save you countless hours of debug time. The time to figure out how to set it up and get it working and understand the tool is going to pay back tenfold, easily. I think those are the major ones that I knew I wanted to bring up. Is there any others that you can think of that major or minor?
Not really. I want to say it's Pix. I wish I'd thought to look this up.
No, Pix is the tool that comes with DirectX SDK.
Okay. Pix, I believe, is the thing that you can actually debug shaders, which is just freaking cool. Like, you take a screen grab, you point to a pixel, and you can actually step through how that's executing,
now,
like you would in Visual Studio.
That you download with the SDK is limited to PC debugging.
Right.
There is a Pix that comes with the Xbox kit, but of course, no indie guy, hobby guy has that kit.
But at least, like, that won't help you with performance in that case, but if you want to understand why a shader is behaving the way it is, there you go.
And, you know, like Pix and debugging the shaders and all that, there's tons of web content out there to show you how to use those tools and get those set up.
It is not easy.
No, and it's not always intuitive. Like, this stuff is like, you get
it's low level. It's stuff.
You get a wall of numbers and metrics, and it's like, you kind of need to find some of these walkthroughs to understand, like, okay.
Here's what I need to focus in on, ignore everything else.
But and most of the time, like, I don't understand, like, 2/3 of the columns in, like, some of the profilers, but the 1/3 of columns that I do understand are usually the most valuable. You know, number of times called, the types of calls, and memory usage are the ones I'm always looking at, and, you know, and it doesn't hurt to run this stuff before you have development issues. Just to kind of see where you're at and go like, oh wow, that is slow. Let me put a task on my Kanban board to look into this method to see why this is my slowest executing method, to see if it can be sped up. And then, you know, I have a few minutes and it's like, oh, I'll look into that and just debug that one code. That's also an easy task to hand off to another developer. It's like, well, I'm done with the collision, but it runs slow. But it's done, so I can move on to my next task. But if anybody wants to grab why this is slow, if not, I'll come back to it.
It is the type of thing usually that having someone else look at it.
Yeah, is beneficial. So that, I think, wraps up GameMarx for this week. That pretty much it. If you want to send in an email, ask any questions, we will gladly, like, you know, take out time to discuss and cover them on the air. The email, of course, is podcast@gamemarx.com or fuckyoguys@gamemarx.com. Both will work. And we will get them both. And, you know, we'll read your email on the air and potentially answer your question. May not answer it accurately, may not even try, but we will read your email. I can guarantee that much. Thank you everyone for watching the show. Thank you everyone for tuning in live to the show, and we will be back in a week.